Good day, folks. This is Matthew Brown here, finding one for our son at Madison 365. You can get us at Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please hit subscribe, share, do all that fun jazz. I'm actually throwing myself a little bit of a curveball today. I was planning and pulled together a nice little script and everything like that. And we can see if I might do this in next week, right? About really, well, our nation, everything that's been going down, paths forward, exploring possibilities, and that idea of what happened on the inauguration day. Why didn't things go down, and why confronting fascism and white supremacy why how we can confront national and white supremacy without going full force militarization, but how that direct confrontation, right? With the National Guard there and everything were instrumental in keeping things and keeping these dudes at bay, right? People at bay. And how there's a real ability for us to confront them without militarization through deplatforming, through traditional mechanisms. There's real ways to do this, but just the general idea of direct confrontation with these folks, right? Directly confronting them is what needs to happen. And that at times you're going to have something kind of like that, directly confront them and their threat. And how particularly that point in time, that was really the only option because we let things get out of control. And not just because of Trump, and that started before. It all started before Trump. It goes way back. But I'll say that for next week because something kind of irked me this morning. Kind of drinking my coffee, kicking on Twitter, and and it wasn't just this alone. It just really, I guess, a straw. I've been talking in some group chats and things overall about some of our recent portrayals of Black women, from Amanda Gorman, Stacey Abrams, and Michelle Obama to others. It was a photo of Michelle Obama holding a lightsaber. And I also saw photos of Michelle Obama, because of her mask, being compared to this Black woman character in the HBO show Watchmen, which is great. Watch it if you haven't. It's really intense, but it's really, really good. As well as watch also a Lovecraft Country. That's also pretty good too. It's kind of wild. It's fun. But it made me wild uncomfortable. It really did, and it's continuing to do so. There's these things that it didn't start or end with Stacey Abrams, and same with Amanda Gorman. But it's the deification, the superheroification, and it's reaching of these Black women that go out and do dope things that deserve celebration and recognition, but particularly white folks, and it's not just white folks, but particularly is quite prevalent among white folks, is these, let's make them into superheroes and giving them this saw so many tweets of give Stacey Abrams her own Marvel movie, and you're seeing this with Amanda Gorman and this over praising that's reaching a fetishization point. It's a fetish point. And there's always been this fetishization of Black women, this weird dichotomy of the idea of the strong Black woman, right? And woman, which is true. Black women have to be immensely strong. They shouldn't have to be. But it often reaches an inflection point where it goes far past the recognition that Black women have to be strong because of oppressive barriers within sexism and racism that are put upon them, to the fetishization of Black women at that level. It becomes a stereotype that Black women will always save this country, save us. We have to save ourselves as men, from Black men to white men, and being mixed race, in both sides of that. And this country, it can't perpetually rely upon Black women to save it, right? When we don't do the work. Particularly when a lot of these same people that I've seen sharing some of these memes of praising these Black women I've seen and heard dismiss and disregard Black women in our own community doing hard work that they might feel are too radical, too aggressive, too much. Two Black women at the top of my mind that I've seen this happen to, and are Brandy Grayson and Nada Al-Makashfi. Some of the same people I've seen post some of these memes, I've seen dismiss these two Black women. And I know of other people I've seen posting these memes that I know have dismissed Black women I know for a fact have dismissed Black women in meeting rooms and boardrooms around policy for various different reasons. So it's easy to support amongst particularly a lot of these white folks and white women that buy into white feminism have done quite a bit that just harms Black women in real ways, while upholding a stereotype that we need to deconstruct because it helps perpetuate racism and sexual and gender oppression of Black women. We should absolutely recognize the unfair distribution of labor Black women have that make it so that they have to be strong. That ranges, again, from in gender oppression, from Black men oppressing to other things, again, unequal distribution of labor. Black women are much more likely to be in service jobs, service positions, and care positions. Women in general, particularly when it comes to families, are much likely to be in these care positions. But then we also get into the breaking up of Black families on how we'll say, well, Black fathers need to be more around. Well, one, according to a CDC study, Black fathers are much more involved in their kids' lives than white fathers. But on two is this country does so much to break up the Black family, from mass incarceration to my own experience in growing up with my Black father, who was absent in a lot of points of my youth because he was working so much. And this was a different kind of work than you might think of as the typical father, as, obsessed with work and this high-level corporate gig. No, it wasn't that. It was service. Service to our community. Not like the service industry, but community service. You're talking about with the Urban League. You're talking about the civil service types of stuff. Because he felt he had to, and he rightfully had to. I know that feeling, that drive, right? You have to work to end these things, to end your oppression for your family, for your friends, for your own livelihood. And we do that to our Black families as well. Again, putting undue labor on Black women, because a lot of times also these Black women are out in the community doing good work themselves. So the fathers can be out doing work, the mothers can be doing work, and then we get home and have the unequal distribution of labor at home. Further recognition of holding down families, holding down men, in a lot of real ways. And then on top of just having the power through the professional world of themselves, more likely to be dismissed, less likely to be recognized. So then when we get to this point of these Black women that do something amazing in public, right? Because they've had to get to this point to work harder, to be smarter, to get to that point of achievement. They not just twice the amount, like 2, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of work, right? To even get to the point of being recognized. We brand them as these superheroes and say, give them all the things, but yet when it comes to, helping more Black women get to points of success, of leadership, of recognizing their achievements in the mundane aspects of life, the everyday work environment, the everyday at home, the everyday in our community. Because a lot of times these Black women are also helping to heal and raise the community around us, from looking out for other people's kids, to looking out for other adults, right? being mindful of those around. Again, unequal distribution of labor, which is, true across race. There's an unequal distribution of labor between men and women across race, particularly when we get into home labor. You can look at COW's Center on Wisconsin Strategy, COW's, COWS, report. It's a think tank at UW-Madison on this. Full disclosure, I used to work for COW's, but there's some great reports that particularly Laura Dresser has headed up on unequal distribution of labor and lost wages. And those are more likely to be, who are more likely to be working in nursing homes and care facilities. Again, these are brown and black women. So you got to ask yourself, particularly you white folks, and these white women, why are you sharing these memes? And how reflective are you in how you treat black women in your lives? How many black women do you know in your life that would call you a friend? How many? How many have you relied upon for an unequal distribution of labor that you or somebody else has taken recognition for, and you haven't made sure that black woman has had recognition, has had support? How many times have you sat there quiet? How many times there have you thought or shut down a black woman because you thought her to be too aggressive? When somebody like myself, whether it be a white man or somebody like myself being light-skinned and having light-skin privilege and being white passing and having that privilege, or even just it could be even a black man, right? You can still get the angry black man, but still much more likely you can go into a space and be assertive, right? Be your full self. And because white women, you know this too. But you turn her back around and take that same type of gender oppression and put it right back on the black woman. So take this time to reflect with the amount of undue pressure we put on black women that are high achieving to save us, to lift the world. And then how we present them. And how we celebrate them. Are we perpetuating this myth? Because again, we can hold them up without making them into superheroes because they're human. Black women are human. And if you are on Black Twitter, let me tell you, they're tired. They're tired. And they're telling us they're tired. They're tired of our BS. It's not on them to save us. It's on us to save ourselves. I'm talking about everybody that ain't a black woman. And I know, brown and indigenous women can recognize this too. And then, of course, white women, I know you recognize this stuff because I know you feel the undue burdens of labor. I know you know what it feels like to be targeted as being overly aggressive or dismissed, right? On having to make that balance. But yet far too often, white women choose whiteness over, gender solidarity and turn back around and oppress both in gender and racially black women. This is, where intersectional stuff comes in, really, of folks' identity. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but it's kind of how it presents itself. And this is something, we've talked about in a couple of my group chats is this, how uncomfortable us seeing this is making. Us seeing this is making us. Excuse me there. It is a fetish and it's sick. It really is. Especially with how much weight we put on black women. And I know I'm repeating myself here, but I feel like I have to repeat myself here to drive home the point. This is just 15 minutes so far, just me repeating myself, folks. And it's just wild. This is absolutely wild. And sorry, this is, a little bit looser than I typically have been, I didn't prepare a script for this, but then I'm running off the top of my head. And I don't think I need to dig through and pull out all sorts of evidence for this thing. Because a lot of y'all need to pause, stop and reflect. Think about how you treat black women in the various ways in your life. Who are you celebrating? How are you celebrating? And who aren't you celebrating? Who aren't you uplifting? Who aren't you defending? Particularly in those individual moments. And it shouldn't have to be super high accomplished folks like Stacey Abrams, who has gone above and beyond what she should ever have had to have done. And let me tell you, Wisconsin has that Stacey Abrams, particularly in Milwaukee. Black Bloc, good organization out of Milwaukee, doing a lot of organizing and voting. And from my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but from my understanding, under Ben Wickled's leadership, the DPW, Democratic Party of Wisconsin, has done a lot better job of engaging and organizing around on these black voters, and I hopefully continue to do so. But it's a national issue as far as every state has multiple folks like Stacey Abrams, who's doing very hard on the ground organizing work, who don't get celebrated, who don't get supported by the wider political structure, who don't get brought up in and celebrated in newspapers and press, and presented around on social media, and supported by a lot of folks like you, and a lot of white folks out there. Because there's a lot of folks that I've been seeing that have been posting these memes that I know have not gone out and investigated and found ways to support Black women organizers in our own communities. Brandy Grayson's one of them. And it's amazing, she's getting, good white support from a lot of folks, but, it's kind of interesting. There's been, at least my understanding, I heard from, there's been some behind the scenes stuff as far as her, was trying to get some endorsements of some folks who are a little iffy about it. Granted, she's running against a Black woman, but her opponent on common council uses her blackness to hide behind when she's voting in anti-Black ways. And Sherry Carter is no Stacey Abrams and is no strong social justice advocate, and in fact has done, in my view, more damage to social justice work in Madison for using her blackness to maintain a racially oppressive status quo and feigning support for justice. Brandy's not like that. She's going to do, go and hit the ground running hard, working hard for this, and hard for families. Brandy's great, but there's more Brandys in Madison than we know, more than I know. I got to hold myself accountable as well for not looking, for times I fail to find some of these folks and hold them up and support them. But it's also part of the reason why I, got behind Nada's campaign so fast and when she ran for assembly. Because there are other people in there that might have had the check boxes marked and Nada was fell in line with me very politically well, much more than anybody else. But also, this black woman that came in, who I aligned well politically with, who had energy, who I know supported other Black women and wasn't in this for herself and wasn't using her blackness to hide behind, policies that perpetuate racialized oppression. And I felt she was the only, not the only candidate of color that did that, but let's put it this way, the only Black woman that did that in that race. Particularly in not thinking that she was in it for herself. So I'll let that speak for itself. So pause, reflect, read up. But the biggest thing you can do, well, two biggest things, is one, stop with the deification of Black women like this. They're human. And putting this undue pressure on them isn't fair. And two, figure out better ways to support Black women in your life. If you're in a position of power, on a board, on a committee, or thinking about running for office, and there's a Black woman sitting in the wings, or running for office as well, and you align with them politically. Let's say you're running for office and there's a Black woman that you align basically one-on-one with politically, but you want to run for elected office, right? Looking at you, two people running against Rusk here on the Common Council, you back out and you support that Black woman, particularly if they're younger. Not to be ageist or anything, but, just in general, we need to support our youth better and lift them up, but support them. Drop out, support them. Lend them your experience that far too often we deny Black women, that resume checkbox experience. if you're on a board and resign and say, and replace yourself with a black woman. We can do this. Promote the black woman. Do what you can. If you're in a boardroom and you see the dismissal, put up the fight. Directly confront that with the person. Don't make it, and don't let that black woman sit there on her own. Because far too often we do that. There's times that I've missed it, and in meetings and boardrooms. And I've always constantly worked to get better at making sure, in those points of, maybe arguments or debates in meetings, that black woman isn't sitting there by herself. I'm not perfect about it, but it's what we have to do. And so holistically, we all have to be mindful of how we're behaving in these situations and to do better. And not to leave black women just hanging out there by themselves. Because it's a yes, support black women, but we also have to support the right black women. That's why I'm supporting Bernie Grayson here. It's really uncomfortable on how some of y'all operate in some of this. Making them superheroes and going back to your own lives and not supporting black women. That's just how it is, I suppose. It doesn't mean it has to be that way. But that is it. That is it for this week. Thank you for coming. My name is Matthew Browngan here at Find the Warmth of Our Sun and Madison 365. You can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please hit subscribe, like, and all that fun jazz. Share, do it all. Continue to mask up and stay safe out there. Stay warm. Do your thing. Have yourself a good week, folks.
This is 365 Media.